With over 70% of viewers not subscribed, be sure to hit that button as I push for 50,000 subscribers. One cannot help but feel that every few years or so, discussions around a re-engine of a beloved plane emerge. Sometimes these discussions hold more weight than others, but primarily they have the same result: all talk and no action. The Boeing 767 series is a beloved aircraft, and when we really think about the plane and its overall impact to the world of aviation, it changed how twin-engined air travel was perceived and completed, and many would argue paved the way for twin-engine wide-bodies that we see nowadays and the missions that they're able to complete. So, as a result, the 767 has always been much the subject over a re-engine, what the potential ramifications would be, and whether such a move would be worthwhile. This has occurred throughout history, and there have been some reputable sources that have reported such discussions. Arguably, the biggest came in 2019, when Flight Global discussed Boeing's exploration of new engines being adopted on their 767 freighter, which was at the time killing it in terms of orders and overall interest in a market segment that truly did require a type such as this. Given the designation as a 767-XF at the time, this proposal focused on enhancing efficiency on a reliable aircraft type, but doing so without breaking the bank and making significant, structural changes that would mean the likelihood of a clean sheet would just make more sense. If proceeded with, the view was to implement GEnx engines onto the body and find ways to preserve the integrity of the aircraft wherever possible. Ultimately, this approach really aimed at mitigating costs and providing a short to medium term solution for companies seeking an improved middle-of-the-market airliner for their freighter needs. With this came further discussions around the potential of a passenger version re-engine, because of course it did. If pulled off, such a re-engine would have aimed again at addressing that gap in the middle of the market, which, as you may recall, in 2019, or just generally towards the latter stages of the 2010s, was heavily debated, as Airbus was making their initial strides into taking market share away from the plane maker. Despite trying to navigate a crisis where their highest selling and most crucial aircraft was grounded over a 21-month period, there was just a lot of pressure being put on Boeing to respond. Would it be in the form of an expensive and timely clean sheet aircraft, or would they take a route such as what they did with the MAX and push an existing airframe to the limits, add some new engines and collect sales, and then reassess in 10 to 15 years? Well, the latter would have definitely been a risky move given the time frame, and given just how much criticism was on the MAX, which many argue is a plane that was pushed to the absolute limits on that 737 fuselage. A re-engine had sometimes become, though, a more compelling option for the plane maker, despite everything I just mentioned, and this was per several industry sources. Why exactly would they prefer a re-engine? Well, if they proceeded with it, let us say this just wouldn't take as many resources, whether that is from the overall time to the costs in comparison to a clean sheet. Don't get me wrong, it still would have taken some time. Obviously, there is a certification process that would have to be fulfilled, and now when we really think about how planes are certified, it would have taken a substantial period. There's still investments that need to be made to ensure this plane is going to be efficient, and there's so much more on top of that. But in the view of Boeing, if they had moved forward with a simple re-engine, this would have actually allowed for more asset allocation to help create the future 737 replacement, which still, in 2024, we see arguments made about just what is going to happen with this. Many would be on the side that a clean sheet has to be the way forward rather than a re-engine, and you'd think this is the direction Boeing is at least heading. The Boeing 767 holds a pretty important position in our industry, still with several carriers. You can't deny, though, the reality that this plane is entering its twilight, and at least for passenger operations, it's seen its glory days come to a close. While there are still some airlines flying it around the world, across the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen several high-profile customers bid farewell to it in favour of more fuel efficiency and technologically advanced aircraft that will bring better returns. Despite a dwindling presence with passenger airlines, the 767's relevance is particularly evident in its freighter and tanker operation, providing a lifeline for the program and giving it truly a new lease on life, where it can be successful but also beneficial to its operators in different ways. The potential advantages of a 767 re-engine do exist, and despite this being addressed during the 2019 study, among other points, the absence of, say, firm movement from the manufacturer following these initial discussions really can suggest several things to us. Many people would maybe identify to you the lack of a desire to move forward with it because the negatives outweigh the positives, whether this could be related to finances, time, resources, a desire from suppliers to help build the aircraft, airline customers, engine manufacturers, and many more key stakeholders to actually push Boeing to take that risk and proceed. For instance, maybe, could they find space where a re-engine would take place, and if so, could that space maybe be better used? There are several crucial considerations to be made, and even more on top of what I've just made mention of. Time is a very crucial factor. The International Civil Aviation Organization standards set for 2018 actually pose a pretty looming deadline for producing the 767 freighter among a 777 freighter. This regulatory constraint actually limits the window for any re-engine initiative. While not a clean sheet, any adjustments to an existing aircraft with a deadline of 2028 thus has a much more limited window for sales. And when you factor in development, certification, and more, is it truly worth it? Especially considering Boeing's studies to produce a new airliner in the 2030s that would harbour better efficiency, groundbreaking technology, and so much more. And while I'm focusing on the passenger element, you'd argue that if this plane was deemed a success, Boeing very well may look to implement that technology into a new updated freighter as well, who may just replace the 767F to a certain extent as well, although that theory is pure speculation. Another factor that can obviously be considered and taken into account in the last 5 years is Boeing's performance. While always going to be hypothetical, would their stance on several things related to future aircraft have changed if what we saw take place in 2018 and 2019 onwards never occurred? The reality is, we'll never know, but arguably the last half a decade, if not now longer, has been pretty tough for Boeing, and even now at the beginning of 2024, those struggles continue. It's battling with a lot, including now new quality assurance troubles that it's trying to remove itself from, and it's still struggling to certify 737 MAX jets, let alone thinking about re-engineering a 767 for a passenger operation. So, should Boeing re-engine the 767 for passenger usage? Well, you could probably make the case that if they truly desired to do such a thing, they likely would have done it already. Now, time's run out, and this will likely not be something that they'll pursue. If you have any thoughts on a 767 re-engine and whether you'd like to have seen it within the industry, let me know down below in the comments. Or are you on the camp that it just didn't make enough sense, and maybe the opportunity was there with the clean sheet design dubbed the NMA or 797, but they didn't proceed with that, so there was no need to move forward with something else? Let me know. Thanks a lot for your support here on the channel. It certainly does mean a lot. Do take care, be safe, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.